Welcome back to All Things Creepy. I'm your host, Micah James. And this week I am talking about 5 different confirmed hoaxes. Now, part of the reason why I am saying confirmed hoaxes instead of just the general term hoax is because some hoaxes that I could talk about are they're more conspiratorial, right? Especially when it comes to the moon landing. That one kept coming up, but it does fall more into the camp of conspiracy theories. And I do plan on covering more conspiracy theories in the future. So I wanted to focus on stuff that someone has come forward and said, yeah, I made this up, or some sort of test has, confirmed that okay, whatever this is not a real thing. So with that being said, let's talk about these hoaxes. So the first one that we are talking about is about the evolutionary idea of a missing link. So if I can find a video on it that I'm thinking of, I will post it in the show notes. But the long and short of a missing link, in case you don't know what that is, it's basically the idea that there is something missing in the chain of evolution that connects primates to humans, like early humans versus modern humans, and there's something missing in that chain. But that idea in and of itself could potentially even not be a real thing. But like I said, if I can find the YouTube video that I am thinking of, I will post it in the show notes for you guys to watch it. But let's talk about the actual hoax now. So the missing link, like I said, kind of starts with evolution, which was an idea first proposed by Charles Darwin. He even published a book about his findings entitled On the Origins of Species. Ever since then, people have been trying to find this supposed missing link, and it was allegedly found in 1912 by this amateur geologist and archaeologist named Charles Dawson. The skull was given the name Piltdown Man. While many people did buy into it, there were still skeptics, and those who did not believe it said it looked exactly like what it was, a human skull with an ape jaw or some type of other primate jaw. There was a ceremony in December of 1912 hosted by the Geological Society of London where Dawson could present his findings. Then in 1917, believers felt like they got a little vindication. There was another skull found, and it was given the title Piltdown II. As more and more early human skulls were found, however, in China and Africa, the legitimacy of the Piltdown skulls came under scrutiny. These new skulls had an ape-like head and a human-like jaw, which is the exact opposite of the Piltdown ones. Finally, in 1953, the Piltdown Man was run through some tests which exposed the skull as a fraud. The non-believers were definitely on the right track. It was revealed that this skull was a combination of 3 different animals. The skull itself was human, the jaw was from an orangutan, and then the teeth were of a chimp. To top it all off, the fluorine dating shows that the skull was no more than 100,000 years old. Now, assuming that this was a real skull, as presented, it's still old, but it's not old enough to be considered a missing link. There is no answer to who the real perpetrator of this hoax was, although many people suspect that it was Charles Dawson himself. So the next one we're talking about is a little bit sillier than the previous one, but it's all about indecent animals. There was a man by the name of Clifford Prout Jr. who was fed up with animals just walking around in the nude. So much so that in the 50s, he started this group called SINA, which is short for the Society of Indecency to Naked Animals. Clifford believed that animals deserve some modesty just as much as humans deserved it. According to Prout, allowing animals to wander around with their genitals just hanging out, it contributed to moral decay. The public took SINA so seriously that Clifford Prout received a $40,000 donation to continue his efforts. However, in 1964, the truth finally came out. Clifford Prout Jr. wasn't a real man, and SINA wasn't a real group. The person behind this was actually a career hoaxer named Alan Abel, who would later impersonate I believe, a millionaire named Howard Hughes and offered a euthanasia cruise for those who were ready to go. Now, Alan Abel, I went down this rabbit hole, and his story is very interesting, to say the least, and so much so that I might end up doing a whole episode just dedicated to him. He's like he legitimately made a whole entire career out of hoaxing people. So it's definitely something worth talking about, I think. So I'll do an episode on him in the future. Hoax number 3, you can make an argument that it's not even a hoax. Even in my notes, I titled it Hoax Unintended, because there is an argument to be made that this falls under the mass hysteria umbrella, as well as the hoax umbrella. And this unintended hoax was the radio presentation of H.G. Wells' sci-fi novel, War of the Worlds. There are a few things that kind of led to this whole situation getting out of hand. So, first and foremost, prior to this presentation, there was a disclaimer that would have helped avoid this whole thing. However, there were many people who were listening to another station and didn't tune in until 8:12, thus they missed the disclaimer. So, that definitely led to how things turned out. On top of that, the alien invasion started with a weather report and a concert. This was followed by many quote-unquote reports of explosions on Mars, a meteorite touching ground in New Jersey, and finally with aliens actually invading. With the reporters starting to become more and more frantic, the 1 million people who tuned in also started to panic. Even in the reports on the program said that major cities were getting destroyed, like New York City. But major cities, that's the point, were starting to come down. People were arming themselves and crowding highways because they genuinely thought that the Earth was under attack. CBS ended up getting wind of this hysteria, so they had to get Wells himself onto the radio and remind everyone that it was all fiction and it's not really happening. This is another one that I think that I can potentially link down in the show notes. I think it might be available for you guys to listen if you guys are interested in hearing it. It's definitely very compelling for sure. The next hoax, I feel like, is pretty well known. I've heard a lot of other podcasts and just YouTubers in general cover this one if they covered hoaxes, but that is the Cardiff giant. So giants in general have been a big part of mythology all over the world, and on October 10th, 1869, 2 men seemingly found evidence of giants' existence. These 2 men were named Gideon Emmons and Henry Nichols. They were digging a well on a New York farm for owner William Newell when they found this 10-foot petrified man. As word spread, Newell decided to put up a tent and charge a quarter for a peek at the giant. As more and more people started to come, he eventually started charging 50 cents as it became more and more popular. Some claim that this body was an ancestor of the Onondaga people, while others claim that this was evidence of the giants referenced in the Bible. Many still believed the Cardiff giant's authenticity, despite professionals saying that this giant was fake. William Newell eventually sold this quote-unquote mummy to 2 businessmen who took the body on tour to make more money. P.T. Barnum ended up offering these men $50,000 for the giant for his own collection. When they declined, Barnum created a knockoff for his New York museum. Eventually, a man named George Hull came forward and admitted that this was a get-rich-quick scheme. He commissioned a German stonecutter to create this man and asked his cousin William Newell to bury the body. Even after the hoax was revealed, the Cardiff giant still made its rounds before making its way to the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown in 1947, where he still lives today. Now, this thing, it's definitely very cool looking, in my opinion. I will post a picture of the Cardiff giant on my Instagram in blue sky. So, if you've never seen what it looks like, it's definitely I'll call it a piece of artwork because it is I feel like you need a lot of artistic talent to create essentially 10-foot statue that looks like a mummified man. It's really amazing looking. Okay, so just kind of speaking of P.T. Barnum, that's who we're heading to for the last hoax we're talking about today, and that is the Fiji mermaid. This is another one where I'm going to post a picture on my Instagram in blue sky in case you've never seen it. Fun fact, I found two different spellings of the Fiji mermaid. The first one is Feejee, and then the second version of the spelling is like Fiji, Japan, so Fiji. That's a little fun fact. But anyways, the thing about P.T. Barnum is that nowadays we kind of already know that he wasn't super honest about all of his attractions and performers. So it was kind of hard to choose just one of his supposed discoveries. But I wanted to talk about one of his more famous, quote unquote, real discoveries. He ended up dubbing it the Fiji mermaid, as I said. He claimed that these were the remains of a real mermaid found in the Bay of Bengal. Eventually, staff from the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology got their hands on a specimen called the Java mermaid. Now, here's the thing. I don't think this was the Fiji mermaid that they were doing their tests on, but at bare minimum, it was very similar to the one that Barnum had. The museum wanted to get to the bottom of this mystery. After all, if PT was telling the truth, then this would have been a brand new discovery and would have been even better for his business. However, it was found that this wasn't really a mermaid. In fact, it was just a souvenir handcrafted by Southeast Asian fishermen and sold to tourists as a mermaid. These creatures are a mix of paper mache and fish bones and fins. Now, much like the War of the Worlds broadcast, you can kind of argue that this is not really a hoax. There is potential that P.T. Barnum genuinely thought that this was a mermaid, but knowing what I personally know about P.T. Barnum, just through my general research, it kind of tracks that he might have actually known that this wasn't really a mermaid, but instead just kind of like a tourist trappy kind of thing. So that's what I got for you guys today. If there are any confirmed hoaxes that I haven't talked about in this episode, hit me up and I will potentially make a part 2 to this, as there is enough confirmed hoaxes that I could definitely do another episode. Well, really another few episodes on this topic. If there are any conspiratorial hoaxes or just conspiracy theories in general that you want me to talk about as well, I can definitely add that to my list of topics to cover. Now, with all of that being said, I will see you guys next week, and please be safe out there.